You ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
Let the dogs out. You know, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com. Your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. Always available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Always available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Good morning to the peeps that are already there. We certainly appreciate that. It is Friday, so happy Friday to you and yours with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and there is still plenty to talk about with the Vols as awards ceremony was last night. Congratulations, Jalin Hyatt, a young man who I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit. We were already doing Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays. This is early on. We started them in March, I believe, with the videos on YouTube. And I saw Jalin Hyatt in one game and saw his attitude, talking about how he looked back on last season. It almost sounded like he was visiting with a counselor or a therapist, talking about how he wasn't focused last year and the openness and honesty. And I tried to hire him. I tried desperately to hire him. I went to Jacob and I was like, hey, man, I got to get him on. Now, I didn't know that he was going to score 5 touchdowns every other week at the time. This was very early. I think this was right after. Was it Ball State or Akron that was first, Caleb?
It was Ball State. Ball State.
Yeah, it was early. I was on the front cusp, but not early enough. And now he's got much better NIL deals with, like, I don't know, Hyatt. That kind of defeats Off the Hook Sports as much as we try. So a huge show on tap today as we're going to look back at the awards ceremony last night. Look forward to Clemson a little bit and where Hendon Hooker finally fell in the Heisman Trophy race, which they announced yesterday, and I'm not sure if it makes me feel better or worse about it. So the one thing you could do for me that would be absolutely great, and I would really appreciate it, if you could go ahead and click on that like button. I think most of you have seen it, but if you haven't at this point, as a matter of fact, I look at the analytics and 80% of our viewers have not subscribed. So please subscribe. We're growing the show leaps and bounds, and we've got a monstrous announcement that's coming out in January that we're really, really excited about. And so a lot of things happening, and we appreciate you. But hit that like button, thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. Give me your comments, and I want to dive right into it. And Caleb, should Tennessee fans, we saw 3 things essentially happen last night, and you and I were covering it. People can read about it on offthehooksports.com. And by the way, I'm also going to get into some new names that I'm hearing with the transfer portal in terms of quarterback. But we saw 3 things happen. Last night, we saw Hendon Hooker was the 5th one of the Heisman finalists. They released that. I don't know if they usually do that or not, but they did. They did the 5 through 10. So he was 5th. He was 1 out from being invited to New York, which kind of is heartbreaking, but kind of validating for his play at the same time, I guess. And then the other is you had Jalin Hyatt win the Blitnikoff Award. And you texted me earlier in the day, because we split it up, and Caleb had the awards that Hooker could potentially win, and I had Hyatt, and you just said in passing, if he doesn't win, it's a travesty. So, and I looked at the numbers beforehand to kind of pre-write, and you're right. If he hadn't won, it would have been a travesty. It would have been Marvin Harrison winning because of his dad, basically, is the only possibility I could see there. And then the Walter Camp Award does not go to Hendon Hooker. So should Tennessee fans, and Dean says appreciate the show daily, you folks do it right. Dean, wait till you see what we got coming. And I appreciate that very much. Should Tennessee fans feel better or worse after the presentation yesterday? By the way, Hendon Hooker won the Herbie, whatever that means, by Kirk Herbstreit as the top offensive player in college football. But Caleb, should Tennessee fans feel better or worse after last night?
I think overall it's a net better in the sense of a relief. Yes, it's a gut punch. As I wrote about, it's a gut punch that Hendon Hooker kind of got shut out of every major award. You hoped you might see him win the Walter Camp. I thought Walter Camp is one of those that takes like the whole you guys know I'm not like the whole character is amazing and I like I'm not one of those guys, but I thought Walter Camp did take that into account. I thought that was one of the awards that did take that into account. So I thought maybe you could have given that one to him.
Do you know why it does, actually? You're right, it does. Do you know why?
It does? Why?
Back in 1997, somebody that ended up winning the Heisman Trophy made a real rear out of himself during that weekend when they were there. Charles Woodson acted like he was 10, and he's a grown man now. He may be different, but he acted like he was better than the room, and they were lucky to have him there. And the Walter Camp Award regretted him even being in attendance.
Really?
So that was when they started factoring character in more. I don't know if it's in writing. I don't have a vote for that, but go ahead. You're right. They do factor that in more than the Heisman now.
Yeah. So if you factor that in, I will say that at that point, Hendon Hooker, Caleb Williams, come on. At that point, you do have to throw Hendon Hooker is the greatest guy to be in the Heisman contention this year. So I thought you could have given him that award. I was fine with Max Duggan getting the Walter Camp or getting the O'Brien Trophy. I will say with Hooker, the thing that stands out the most is how inconsistent these awards have been, because Hooker was named AP SEC Player of the Year. He was named Coach's SEC Player of the Year, but somehow Stetson Bennett gets the Heisman invite over him. On top of that, a crazier part, Josh Heupel was AP Coach of the Year and wasn't among the 8 finalists for the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year award. So just wild inconsistencies. But Jalen Hyatt winning the Biletnikoff, that award was established in 94. At that time, Tennessee was wide receiver U, and they had never taken home a Biletnikoff. It's high time they got one in Knoxville, and I think Tennessee fans should celebrate. There are 8 people from Tennessee to win any of these technical awards, you might call it. 2 of them are coaches. Fulmer won Coach of the Year in 1998. By the way, I think that was just because writers did no research on Tennessee football heading into that year and were shocked that they were still good after losing Peyton Manning. So they gave Fulmer Coach of the Year to cover for themselves, not doing their job and knowing how loaded that team was.
Well, and not to interrupt your flow here, but I think that's the problem across the board. I've had before this year, I've had respect for the Biletnikoff Award because I do think they do their research. But I think Heisman and a lot of these places do not do their research. I don't think it's people say politics. I don't think it's that. I think it's ignorance. Sorry to stop your flow.
No, I totally agree. I was glad you threw that in. You're absolutely right. Also, 98, David Cutcliffe won the Broyles Award that year. So Fulmer and Cutcliffe both won awards. Those are 2 coaches. And then there's Michael Munoz won the Campbell Trophy in 2004. That's not a strictly on-field performance, though, because the Campbell Trophy takes into account your academic success, too. So there have been 5 specific on-field award winners. Jalen Hyatt was the 5th last night. He joins guys, check out this company Jalen Hyatt's in now. Eric Berry, 2009 Thorpe Award. John Henderson, 2000 Outland Trophy. Peyton Manning, 97 every award you can name outside of the Heisman. And Steve DeLong, 1964 Outland Trophy winner. That's the company Jalen Hyatt's in, and that's pretty good company when you talk about legends for Tennessee.
Now, that is really good company, and I think Jalen Hyatt deserves to be in there. And again, I looked at the numbers, and I don't know that it really should have been close, and it was exciting for Jalen Hyatt. And again, he answered it the same way. So I'm sitting there writing, and I'm thinking I'm going to pull some quotes for offthehooksports.com, and I'm thinking he's not going to say anything. And I was right. He didn't say anything. The one piece of news that he gave us, and I mean that as a compliment, the one piece of news that he gave us is that I just assumed he was going to the NFL, right?
Yes.
He said it was 50-50 and he'd have an announcement next week. So I still would think he would go to the NFL, but this NIL thing changes everything. I mean, it truly does, because I don't know what he's making from Hyatt. I don't know what these other guys are making numbers wise, but if they're in the 6 digits, which could be the case, do you think about coming back? I think it's so funny how history repeats itself, because I always thought the argument was, if you're in the first round, you should go. Now, Philip Fulmer and I disagreed on this when we had a discussion one time. He goes, no, first half of the first round. I'm like, no, you just want kids to stay. But I always thought, if you're in the first round, if you're projected there, you don't know, but you should go. Nowadays, I mean, if you have a chance, what's to Google this, what's late first round money, Caleb? I don't know. But if it's somewhere in the realm of, $1.5 million, I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm pulling numbers out, so we'll have those numbers before the end of the show. But if it's in that realm of $1.5 million, why don't you think about staying if it's going to be $750,000, $800,000? Better your game. And I'm sorry, when you get to the NFL, kids, I'm going to tell you this. I'm not telling anybody what to do. It is a business. They don't care a bleep about you. You could look at Baker Mayfield, for instance. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield's a great quarterback, but he went into one bad situation after another. Look at Patrick Ramsey, who went to the Redskins. I still believe he would have been a very good quarterback, but he was under Steve Spurrier, who thought 5 wide was the way to go, and he got the absolute bejesus beat out of him. I think there are a lot of guys that fall in the wrong spot, don't have leadership. Randy Moss is the opposite of that, who Chris Landry talked about, who had great leadership in Denny Green and Chris Carter, who had gone astray, but was bringing his life back together and was a mentor. Listen, you can go to the NFL and have all the talent in the world, and the cards don't fall right, and you're just a dude. That happens, and you're never just going to be a dude if you're a Jalen Hyatt and comes back for his senior year.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some other factors. Now, I would still lean towards, if you're a first round pick. Now, if you're a mid-level draft pick, maybe you're right. That's where NIL maybe stay, particularly if you're a quarterback, by the way, because if you're an elite quarterback in college, you're going to command a lot of money, and many quarterbacks are going to make more money in college than they ever will in the NFL. If NIL were around in the late 1990s, mid 1990s, Eric Crouch and Tommy Frazier would have been clear when they were in college they were going to make more money in college than the NFL. Other positions, it's a little bit tricky. I would say that if you are a projected first rounder, I would still lean towards going, because you run the risk of killing your draft stock with an injury the next year or whatever. And at the end of the day, a guaranteed first round money over 3 years outweighs whatever you can make in NIL in 1 year. So I say go ahead and go most of the time. But you're right. It also.
Let me ask you this. Okay.
Okay.
Throw this at you. Okay. So you go to college to do what? To make money, right? I don't care what field you're in, if it's carpentry or whatever. If you're going to be a linesman and you go to trade school, which is essentially what football is, if you think about it, it's trade school. So, okay. So if that college told you that you're going to be financially independent, you're going to have $3 million in the bank. Again, just throwing that number out there. $3 million in the bank, and you can play one more year and enjoy it. Now, obviously, Tennessee has a new quarterback, so take the personnel, what you've got coming back, aside. But you can go enjoy your high. I loved college, maybe too much for a while, but I loved college. And you can do that for 4 or 5 years. I think the money is going to get close to NFL money. Maybe not now, maybe not next year, but I think you're going to see that money get close enough where it's at least a decision, Caleb, because I'd rather be happy making 80% of a certain figure than 100% of a certain figure at a job that I just kind of like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it has to not just get close to the base salary of a year for the NFL. It has to get close to your base first contract. So I don't know what the rookie scale is for the NFL now. But like, say it is, if it's 1.5 million, I would assume that's what it is for like top 10 draft picks, right? Like, um, NFL. I'm actually looking this up. NFL draft guaranteed money.
You go ahead and you go ahead and do that, and I'll hit the message board here. I first want to remind you the Down and Dirty at 30, a little late already because we're off and flying, is brought to you by Andy Mason realestate.com. AndyMasonRealestate.com. Don't make a mistake that's going to cost you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Go to a place in which Andy Mason and his crew will take care of you. AndyMasonRealestate.com. Fill it out. At least talk to Andy. Over 40 years of experience. Just get a feel for him. And as I've said before, everybody that we promote on the website, on this show, are people that I have done business with or I would do business with if I need their services in a heartbeat. So AndyMasonRealestate.com brings you the Down and Dirty at 30, which it is a little bit late. Be sure and hit that thumbs up button. We want you to be a part of the show, but we want your friends to be a part of the show. We want other Tennessee fans to be a part of the show because we're going to talk some hoops and we got a lot coming up. Chicken Butt says, man, you guys got to change some of your names because it makes me blush saying it. Says Heisman is a bunch of people that only watch bits and pieces of games or highlights on soccer or on Sports Center. What? Okay, you said that exactly correct. I'm not crazy about your name, Chicken Rear, but I'm such an old fuddy-duddy. But you're exactly right. Here's what I do every Sunday when it's time to cast my Heisman vote. I go back and watch like 2 or 3 hours. My wife's like, "You've watched this all year. Why do you need?" No, I haven't seen Max Duggan the entire year. I haven't seen a lot of him. So that's what I base my vote off of. It's a big deal to me. I consider it a privilege. But of the 1,600 other voters, I would go ahead and tell you right now that I think probably 800 just go click, 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 and they're done. And it takes more time to set up their account than it does do the actual vote. So that's frustrating. David said, hope Amanda gets well soon. She was made for video. I agree. You guys are perfect for radio. That means we're ugly. Cody says Heisman isn't the best player award anymore. It jumped on me. The new description should be quarterbacks on the highest ranked team. I tried to argue that like 5 years ago, but after this latest year, I can't argue it anymore. Remind you that Zul Beer, XULbeer.com, Zul Beer Company is the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. And we got a big signing day event that we're looking forward to. I'll tell you more about that, where we want you to stop by at Zul Beer parking downtown, and we're going to give lots of stuffs away. I got some hooker shirts that may not be as pertinent, but I've got some still to give away that I think you can celebrate in their fine cotton so you can enjoy them in some shape, form, or fashion. All right, Caleb, so you got a pay scale thought because Jalen Hyatt left the door open that he could come back.
Yeah, I don't have. I could not pull. Not in time pull it exactly. Roughly, let's just say roughly for first round, I think it's between 3 and 10 million. That's guaranteed. Okay, and that's like over. So you have to take these salaries over the course of not just 1 year but 3 years, because I think rookie scales are like 3 to 5 years usually in the NFL. Now that's a lot of money that you're leaving on the table and risking for that. I don't think NIL can ever get to like 80% of or even 50% of if you're a first round draft pick. And you're risking a lot of it with the potential of getting hurt, having a bad year, and just killing your draft stock. There's a lot of things that could go wrong that year. Now, if you're the number one pick and you're a quarterback, I do think it depends on, I say this all the time, it depends on who's drafting that year. I think Peyton Manning, I still believe, and you cannot convince me otherwise, that Peyton Manning didn't come back for a senior year because the Jets had the first round pick in 97. Now, they traded it to the Rams, but I don't think he wanted to go to the Jets. And I know from some stories that his family was really big fans of him going to Indianapolis, and he really worked overtime to try to make sure he got there the next year.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that was a 20-30% factor in that decision. I do think he wanted to come back for another year just innately. But okay, let me give you an example. So I did find a list. So Purdue defensive end George Karlaftis signed a contract. He was the 30th pick at the NFL in the NFL draft. So, guys like, Darnell Wright, you would assume would go, right? And Jalen Hyatt, you would naturally assume would go, right? That's at 12 million. Okay. He signed a 4-year contract for 12 million. I understand the injury thing, but I'm not saying I even disagree with you, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. Okay. So you're saying go, right? That you should go if you're going to be in the first round. Is that fair?
In that, yes, most of the time, not every time, most of the time.
Let's take Jalen. I'm gonna play the opposite end of it. Have no idea what he's making. I could probably call him and he wouldn't tell me. So I'm not going to know. But let's say, just for instance, that he's approaching that $1 million, which I think is very possible for a Hendon Hooker. Now, we're not talking about the left guard, okay? And we're probably not talking about the right tackle and Darnell Wright, all right? But still, if they're that important, Josh Heupel's going to find a way to funnel money to you. You don't have to be – I thought when we went into this, Caleb, I think we thought you had to be a premier player to get that type of money. I don't think that's really the case anymore. I think that you have to be a much needed player. So if Darnell Wright came or Jalen Hyatt said, I want to stay another year, but this is the kind of money we're looking at, I think that Josh Heupel would find a way to get him that money. I do. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get up into that. The last pick of the NFL draft last year signed like I said earlier, a $12 million contract. But let's just say you could get somewhere in that $3 million range. Okay. So that's 25%. And then you go to Lloyd's of London and you buy your insurance policy. And if you suffer a terrible injury in a bowl game or whatever, I think of that Jake Butt who played for Michigan, the tight end. That was the same year as Christian McCaffrey when he left early and everybody ripped him. But Jake Butt got his knee turned backwards in that very same bowl cycle. And it cost him a lot. But you go to Lloyd's of London and you're insured very easily for $10 million. We're in the same ballpark of money. So if it comes down to what you love in your heart, maybe your dream has always been to play in the NFL, but nowadays with medical science, he's going to play in the NFL at some point, even if he suffers an injury. So will Cedric Tillman, despite the high ankle sprain. So I'm not saying I would do this, but I'll go ahead and make the argument that you're pretty close money-wise. If you want to stay in college, I get it more financially than ever before.
I understand that. Now, my question with these insurance policies with the NFL, do they still apply if you were a projected first rounder, you come back, you suffer an injury that doesn't ruin your career, but you have like what happened to Cedric Tillman this year, and unfortunately for you, it destroys your draft stock and you fall to like the 5th round when you would have been in the first round if you came out the year before. Because that's where I'm at with it.
It covers a gap. Right.
It covers the gap.
Yeah, so it's not an all or nothing thing. I see what you're getting at. So I had to do this research for, I think, maybe Eric Berry one time. So it does cover the gap. So if you can't, Cedric Tillman's a great example. Let's just say that the ligaments are forever loose in his ankle. Okay. And he went from being a number 1 pick to a number 4 or 5 pick. It would cover the financial gap. It's not a, hey, you still got drafted. Too bad, Lloyd's of London, we're out. So it's not like that. And it's any contract, this. It's just how you write it up. So
and you probably have to prove that you had first round caliber talent when you take it out. But yeah.
Yeah, they judge that on the front end. And listen, you and I could go to Lloyd's of London and say, hey, we want an insurance policy on our NFL future. And they'd say, certainly you can have that. It's going to cost you $5 million. Because it's just insurance, is just weighing what you spend versus what you could get. So that is part of the negotiations. But are you telling me you can't find an NIL guy that's going to throw in that cash? I think you can.
I agree. I still, I mean, in that point, you're probably right. And I think that there's enough, particularly at a place like Tennessee, quite a few multimillionaires, heck, billionaires that are Tennessee fans that are like, man, I'd really love Jalen Hyatt back next year. And let me just get him a quick advertisement, with Pilot or whatever. And so, I mean, or Dish. And yeah, so I could see that. I'm not going to pretend that I can't. I'm with you. I think NIL, the funny thing is like, I do think it's there for everybody because I mean, even if you are the backup left guard, there's a restaurant in Knoxville that'll pay you to promote them on your Instagram. You know what I mean? So like I think one of the best things about NIL is it's actually increased player fan interaction. I mean, I think it's going to long-term increase player fan interaction because players will get paid to do promotions with these companies that want people visiting, restaurant in Knoxville's like, hey, so-and-so's down here today. Why don't you come down and meet him and you can eat at the restaurant? And so, things like that. So I think NIL is as much about how smart the player, not if you're a top athlete, but if you're just an average athlete, NIL is as much about how smart you are than it is as it is about your production and how effective you are in getting the right negotiations.
John said, how long has NIL existed? What are we at? 4 years? Does that sound
No,
right?
he's asking how long does it last?
Oh, well, I mean, theoretically, forever. I mean,
yeah, it depends on the contract they sign, right?
Yeah, I mean, you had Peyton Manning still endorsing products after he went to the NFL in East Tennessee. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you could sign a contract with somebody forever, and then I'm sure there are stipulations that if you retire from football or turn into a huge monster jerk like some guys do, that you could get out of that. But no, the money to me originally when NIL came out was so that Arian Foster could go afford his tacos, which is a joke because he always could. But it's beyond that, Caleb. I think it's going to compete with NFL dollars, not tit for tat, but I think it's going to be in the ballpark where people are going to have some interesting decisions to make. And Caleb, what would Jalen Hyatt coming back to this offense mean next year?
Oh, it'd be huge. I mean, I'm a fan of Squirrel White. You are too, but Jalen Hyatt's a better receiver than Squirrel White. Squirrel White has a lot of speed and is very good with the ball in his hands, but Jalen Hyatt's a true receiver, like in every way. And so, I mean, he's not a wideout, but he's a slot guy, and so, yeah, it would be a huge boost if he came back. One person that actually kind of proves me wrong in the point I'm talking about with NFL draft, and you remember this is John Henderson won the Outland Trophy in 2000. I think he announced when he won the Outland that he was coming back for a senior year, which just shocked everybody because that's a defensive tackle, which is a wear and tear position. And he decided to come back. He didn't have the same year in 2001 that he had in 2000. He had a sprained ankle midway through the year, was still good, but not the same. And he still was the 9th pick in the draft in 2002. It didn't really hurt his draft stock at all coming back and getting hurt. It's so I don't know. I don't know if you have any insight on that and why he chose to come back, because that just seemed like a really risky move by John Henderson in 2000 to do that. But yeah,
I think there were a couple of things. I think he was very loyal to Tennessee, and I think he was smart enough to realize that he could use another year of maturity. I mean, I don't want that to sound mean in any shape, form, or fashion.
No, that's actually a very mature thing to do, to know that you could use another year of maturity.
Yeah, and you had this guy named Albert Hainsworth coming along, and I think there was a sense of unfinished business too. I mean, that's the other thing. Do you think Jalen Hyatt is happy with the way things ended this season? I don't
know, but he's not going to get what he wanted out of next year either, because Tennessee's not going to win in any championship or play for a playoff next year.
Well, I agree, but try telling a competitor that. So
fair enough.
Yeah, and you know how Josh Heupel would spin it, just like any other coach. Now, there have certainly been times, and I remember the ultimate time was that Lane Kiffin came out and he said he told Eric Berry just to go ahead and go pro. He said, you just need to go. All right. You've done all you can do. And I get that, but there was no NIL money then. I mean, it's just completely flipped everything on its head. I thought the NIL money would get you through mealtime week to week, get you through a semester without having to worry about money. We're talking about a different level of cash here. Dean says, I'm still waiting for my NL money for promoting Off the Hook. It's coming, Dean. It's coming. It's coming. Why couldn't Squirrel play wideout? I think what they would probably do is they would get Jalen Hyatt, if he came back, more adept at playing the wideout position and Squirrel on the inside. That's what I would think based off their physical stature. What do you think?
Yeah, but you already got Brew McCoy and Ramel Keaton on the outside, and they're both coming back. And so, I mean, honestly, next year with the tight end situation that we've talked about, they might go 4 wide next year. They usually went 3 wide with a tight end this year, but I could feasibly see Tennessee going 4 wide for most of next year and having all 4 of them out there.
Okay, I have an even better example of a guy that should strongly think about coming back. It just hit me based off what you just said, and I'm going to address it in 2 minutes. But I got to tell you first about Guardian Investment Advisors, and they are absolutely awesome. GIAplantoday.com, GIAplantoday.com. With their video conferencing, you can get the absolute best financial advice in the nation with GIAplantoday.com. They've got offices in Florida and Tennessee, but they're absolutely going to make sure that you know where your money is going and why. I'm going to tell you a player who should think strongly about coming back for 1 more year, despite the fact that he's announced otherwise. Back in 2 minutes, Off the Hook Sports.
Has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. inflation calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant. It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
This is Al's Dish Barbecue Supply, so come on in and see all the different rubs and sauces we have, plus a complete line of Green Mountain grills. Don't be overwhelmed. We have plenty of help so you can produce the best barbecue and amaze your family and friends. Barbecue is America's food. We'll do what we can to bring you all the best products. We're Al's Nest Barbecue, where Chattanooga goes to grill.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
We do our research. Have you done your research?
We're working like heck.
Today's tough question. What's the real debate?
You sipping my soupe, Guadalupe?
Exclusively on Off the Hook Sports with Dave Hooker and Amanda LaFrada.
You drinking my sake, Kimosabi?
Oh my God.
All right, so these numbers are admittedly pulled out of the air, but I want to get a baseline on our message board posts because we love them. We love you people. And be sure and hit that like button, hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed yet, we want you to do that big time. additions to the program coming up. So that's super exciting. But I put this out there as today's tough question. Would you rather make $2 million playing college football or make $5 million in the NFL? And I know those numbers are a little bit random. I know there's a big $3 million difference, but I think they both set you up where if you handle your investments right, and I would go with Guardian Investment Advisors, I think that you have set yourself up for financial independence early in life, as long as you don't blow through it. So, what about you, Caleb? I grew up as more of an NFL fan because my family and I oftentimes were working on Saturdays. And listen, I sold the game programs in Neyland Stadium when I was 12 years old. My mom would drop me off, which is probably really bad parenting. That was before cell phones and everything. You just dropped me off. Good luck. But yeah, I would sell the programs when I was 12 years old. So I mean, I've always loved college football. I would sell them in Neyland Stadium, but for whatever reason, I kind of gravitated towards the NFL. But I've later in my life, I've kind of come full circle, and there's something that's really cool about the NFL and about college football. And with the NFL, there's something that's very, very businesslike, right? So I'll just ask you right now. You can play 4 years. Let's say there's no 3-year rule anymore. You can play 4 years. You're 18 years old. You're coming out of high school. You're the cat's meow, and you can make $5 million in the NFL, or you can make, I'm not going to include all these other endorsements, or you can make $2 million in college football. Is it a lock, stock, and barrel you take $5 million?
No, but I mean, but for me personally, again, I'm very biased because I grew up preferring college football to the NFL. So this is somebody like me, like I love college football. I loved it so much that like I would probably stay the 4 years. I love college football. I also grew up in a family where I was relatively well taken care of. Now what I would say is you've kind of swayed me a little bit. If I can do this insurance policy you're talking about with $2 million, I always knew it was there. I didn't realize that it could be that good of a deal if I can do that, I'd take the $2 million and play 4 years. Yes. Now, if I don't have the insurance policy, if I'm from a rough background, if I just don't have the passion for college football that I have, yeah, I'm probably taking the $5 million in the NFL. I'm not just doing it for the college experience. Put it that way. But I get your point. It's rough. 2 and 5 is like. I always bring this up with funny enough, I always bring this up in the NFL. Contract negotiations, everybody gets mad when players negotiate and hold out for higher money. My barometer is this: are they holding out because is the difference a life-changing difference? If it is, I support them holding out. If you're making $3 million and you're on a rookie scale and you're a running back and you're like, I want that $10 million deal now. That I get that. You want that that's life-changing money. You know what I mean? Right. But if you're a quarterback and you're holding out for $40 million when you're offered $35 million over 10 years, I'm sorry. Take the $35 million. Don't be like Aaron Rodgers taking $50 million and then, everybody wants to feel bad for him having no help. He has no help because they're paying him all the money. And so
well, and yeah, Baker Mayfield's the prime example. He's now cut and went through waivers and ended up with the Rams, and he turned down a $19 million a year contract from the Browns because it didn't top what I think the last one was Dak, maybe. Every quarterback thinks they have to top the last one. Well, I'm sorry, Baker, you're not that good. I mean, I don't think Dak's great, but you're not as good as Dak. You're not as good as Deshaun Watson, off-field issues aside. You're not as good as a lot of those guys that have signed those contracts, so you should take that. I just think there's something to be said. David said, watching from the Arizona desert today, rolling this big rig across the country. Thanks for providing local information no matter where I am. David, as a matter of fact, shoot me an email because I had this thought the other day that I thought I may be able to help some guys find the right job in the logistics and trucking industry. So I'm going to shoot my email out there, and maybe we can start something, because I know they're always looking for workers, and I would love to be associated with somebody just like the rest of our advertisers, somebody that provides a good job for you guys, because you guys that drive those big rigs, I don't know how you do it. It would scare me to death, but you keep our economy rolling. So God bless you, sir. Yeah, I just don't think it's a slam dunk case. And I do not think anybody thought the NIL would start to get to this level. And I get it. Hyatt has the last name and all of that. Yeah. But the bottom line is, I mean, these guys are going to have value outside of local advertisers. Caleb, I mean,
Yeah, and as we've been speaking, On3 NIL is reporting that Hyatt has signed with Everett Sports Marketing for NIL representation. Sounds like they may have brokered the Hyatt Hotels deal. I will say that's kind of a sign of what you're talking about. Maybe he signed because he's planning to come back and he's trying to maximize his NIL money because he's coming back. I mean, maybe that's where maybe he's literally negotiating that right now as we're talking. And so that's what he's trying to figure out.
I just thought it was really interesting. To me, it sounded like a setup question last night when they asked him about returning to the NFL, because returning to college football, because we had all just assumed that he was going to the NFL, right? Nobody thought headed into that interview last night that he was even thinking about coming back. But that sounded like hey, you might want to ask about this, or I noticed you do have another year of eligibility. You might want to ask about this.
He actually has 2, funny enough.
Yeah, 2. So, I mean, I would give it a thought. And check this out on our poll. If you want to go to twitter.com, if given the option, which would you rather do? Make $2 million playing college football. And I accidentally put CFP, so college football playoff. But anyway, you get the point. Make $5 million in the NFL. So right now, what do you think the percentage is right now?
I'm going to say, without the context that you've given me, which people on Twitter won't say, I think it's going to be 60-40 NFL, if I'm being honest.
Well, you nailed it, and now it flipped. So now you had it right, and it flipped now. A couple of votes coming in. 55% would rather play college football at $2 million than $5 million in the NFL. And I get it that our audience is skewed, but there's something to be said too for, Peyton Manning's a monstrous example, but how about taking this one? How about taking Inky Johnson with what he went through? He is absolutely beloved, and I don't know how much he makes per speaking engagement, but you're always going to have a home in college football to fall back on. In the NFL, do you think the Miami Dolphins care what's happening to Bob Jones, who played in the late 80s? They don't care. They're not.
No, and that's a very good point. This is what I said. If you're smart about yourself, when you go to college and if you go to one of these big schools, there's always somebody who wants to take care of you if you're struggling at that point, because people are very thankful that you played for them. I live up, I can tell you that at Maryland, there's a job waiting at Under Armour for you if you played sports at Maryland. There just is. And so I agree. One of the ones that stood out to me that we're talking about this, because there's other caveats here. We talk about injuries. Sometimes injuries can be a reason to come back. I think Trey Smith, funny enough, in 2019, now this was before NIL, but Trey Smith had blood clots in his lungs and was playing offensive line. By the way, just side note, Lady Vols center Tamari Key out for the year with blood clots in her lungs. I think we're all thinking of her. Just an awful, awful situation. But Trey Smith had that for Tennessee, was their star offensive lineman, had to miss part of 2018, had a great 2019, and after his junior year, consensus was go ahead and go to the NFL and get your money. You're an injury risk. You need to go. He chose to come back and finish his senior year. Looking back, that was a smart move, because I think because you're an injury risk, no matter how good you are, the NFL you're still going to fall in the NFL draft. I mean, they look for reasons not to take you in the NFL. And so given that fact, and given the fact that the injury is a risk in the NFL and you're not going to have a lot of guaranteed money, you might as well get your degree at that point and make sure you're safe and covered. So
Totally agree. Let me ask you this from a big picture perspective thing. Where does Jalen Hyatt rank among the top receivers all time at Tennessee? And this one's tough for a lot of different reasons. So you get started.
So I don't go by numbers a lot with receivers because the two top producing receivers in the 90s, Marcus Nash and Joey Kent, were the two top producing receivers of all time after they left Tennessee. And I think both were complete products of Peyton Manning. And I don't think either of them is better. Neither one of them is better than Robert Meacham was in 2006.
Agreed.
I'm still, and I'm the most, I'll freely admit I'm the most biased person you will ever meet on this, but and it's not just about the championship year, but I'm one of the biggest Peerless Price fans, and I will always have him. I'm not kidding on this. I'll have him at number one still to this day over Alvin Harper, over Carl Pickens. And here's my reasoning why. Peerless Price became the number one receiver just as the quarterback that was taking over was not your type of quarterback to throw the football all over the field, which you had Andy Kelly, Heath Schuler, and Peyton Manning all throw the football all over the field, can rack up stats. T. Martin wasn't that. And that's when Peerless Price has to become the number one receiver. And he was T. Martin's safety blanket more times than people can imagine that year. I mean, again, he called a touchdown pass in every game they played against a ranked team that year. And over half of his touchdown passes were lead changes in one-score games. And so I look at that, I'm like, if you talk about production in the moment, Jalen Hyatt has the Alabama game. I'm not taking that away from him because every one of those touchdowns mattered. And that was huge. And that's the greatest game I've ever seen by a receiver. I'll freely admit that. But what Peerless Price did throughout the course of that season, every one of his touchdowns mattered and was in a big game. And I don't know any player who had a bigger impact per touch in Tennessee football history than Peerless Price that year.
Well, and the national championship game, that ball was underthrown. Yeah, he had the deep route down the sideline. He had to position his body perfectly to catch that, and then ended up pulling away. So, no,
he was 5'11" and did that.
Yeah, Peerless to me is a lot like Tyreek Hill. In that Peerless was able, if you needed him to line up in the slot, which you would think would be his natural position because of his size. But by the same token, Peerless played wideout because he was that good. To me, that's what makes Tyreek special. And I'm not a big, huge fan of the dude, and because of off-field issues. But he changes the way you have to cover people because he can play in the slot and he can play wideout. That to me is just an absolute game changer. And Peerless was that type of guy. If you needed him to line up in the slot, or you needed him he didn't do it a lot, but if you needed him to, he could. But he was a natural wideout. And he overcame, if you remember, the broken ankle in spring practice earlier.
96, right?
Yeah. And
was that?
Or I thought it was 97. I thought they had
97. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was Peyton's senior year, but he had the tough ability, he was speedy, he had everything. So I don't hate that one at all. To me, the top receiver in Tennessee football history would just eye test will be Carl Pickens. I just thought that guy was like a kind of a mini Randy Moss sort of dude that was going to win jump balls, that is going to be wide open, that dictated coverage. But again, we're splitting hairs. If you could probably talk me into Peerless here in the next 5 minutes. But as far as where Jalen Hyatt stands, he's right up there.
He is.
I mean, you talk. What's the top echelon? Top 4 or 5.
Okay, top 4 or 5 in no particular order. And this is funny because Tennessee's wide receiver U, but I don't know if I bring anybody from the 80s into this. And even though that's when wide receiver U started, because, actually started in the 70s with Stanley Morgan, but I'm not putting maybe I'll put Stanley Morgan in there.
I'll have Stanley Morgan in there.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not putting Larry Sievers in there. All due respect to Larry Sievers, different time. But okay, so Stanley Morgan. I know people say Willie Gault. He's more of a return specialist than a receiver, I think, to me. I didn't watch at the time, but looking at his numbers, I'm thinking, I think he was more of a superstar because of what he did on special teams. Not knocking that, but Stanley Morgan.
He was a stretch the field guy. A lot like Alvin Harper. Yeah, Alvin Harper, I think the only route he ever ran for the Cowboys was the fly route. That guy had to be the most exhausted player on the team at the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, that was just sidetrack. That Cowboys offense, we talk about simplistic offenses. That is the simplest offense I think I've ever seen. Like, that's why you could bring in Barry Switzer, who had done nothing but coach the wishbone his whole career, to just oversee just that basic I form offense. But
so who's in our top grouping? Pickens.
All right, yeah, I'll give you Carl Pickens, Stanley Morgan. I'm going Peerless Price. Robert Meacham, just that year in 2006, Robert Meacham was just incredible. And then I will go Jalen Hyatt is in there. And for the record, I know I got to do honorable mentions. I'm leaving off Joey Kent. I'm leaving off Marcus Nash. I'm leaving off Willie Gault. I'm leaving off Alvin Harper. Love all of those guys. You're not going to convince me Joey Kent and Marcus Nash were not complete products of Peyton Manning, and I got their NFL careers to prove it.
No, I agree. And I would look at Alvin Harper's NFL career to prove that he was a stretch the field guy, a lot like Willie Gault, because he signed that big deal with the Bucs when free agency came about, and he went to the Buccaneers, and he was not. And when I say a number one wide receiver, I'm not talking about the guy that catches the most passes. I'm talking about a guy that dictates coverage. He was not that guy. He didn't dictate coverage. It was Michael Irvin that dictated coverage. Alvin Harper went to the Bucs, and it was just keep running that fly route. And really that was it. He didn't dictate coverage. He didn't move people around. So, and he got part of his pinky cut off when they were taking off his cast. Did you ever hear that story?
Did not know that. No, they actually cut off his pinky.
So the first year he broke his pinky, and they're taking off the cast, and they accidentally cut off the tip of his pinky. Oops.
Oh my gosh. I mean, luckily you don't use your pinky that much when catching the ball to secure it, but that's gotta suck still.
Yeah, not cool. Not
like you and I do a lot of typing. If we lost our pinky, I think we'd still be able to type. I've never hit a keyboard with my pinky ever. I'm a piano player. That would screw me.
Yeah. So what about Tim McGee? Are we leaving off Tim McGee too easily?
85, Tim McGee. I'm young. I was, for the record, I was born in 88, guys, so I did not watch the 85 team. I've done retroactive research on it. I thought it was the defense that year that I thought it was like Chris White in that secondary that just like really carried them and then Tony Robinson got hurt, wasn't it? Like halfway through the year, Daryl Dickey came in kind of up until the Sugar Bowl, which is, I still can't understand how that game happened because I'm sorry, Miami was the better team across the board and Tennessee just beat the brakes off them that game. But until then, I thought Daryl Dickey in the passing game just kind of managed their way effectively through the second half of the season to survive.
Agreed.
But Tim McGee, I mean, I'm again, there's the NFL career though. Did Tim McGee have much of an NFL career? I didn't think he did.
No, he was pretty good. Played for the Bengals for a number of years.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, I wouldn't say he was great. Go ahead and please click that thumbs up button so we can get more people on the show. We greatly appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, we want you to do that and talk a little hoops coming up later in the program. And the question I want to ask the message board, and if you want to take part in Super Chat, I'll just be honest with you. To me, it's weird asking the Super Chat thing, and I want to thank Dean for contributing to the Super Chat, and it's a way for you to financially support a lot of the projects that we've got going that are going to blow you away starting in January. So I just want you to know that money is going back into the show. We're doing okay. So, but if you want the show to get bigger, and I'm talking bigger as of January, then please contribute to that. We greatly appreciate it. And I feel better and worse looking at last night. I thought that the Walter camp would have been a great addition to. I thought it would have been a fantastic addition for Hendon Hooker and some validation. I do know that the camp award, because of Charles Woodson kind of acting like a jerky boy back in '97, factors in character a little bit more than the Heisman, who I just don't think cares at all anymore. But the fact that he didn't win it, I thought that was a bit of a gut punch. But I am very, very happy to see Jalen Hyatt. This guy a year ago, think about where this guy was sitting a year ago. This guy was sitting in the middle of December thinking, I just blew a year. I blew a year because I didn't come in and work right. Now, he's admitted this. I'm not putting words in his mouth, right, Caleb? I mean,
Yes, he has.
he said it several times. He said, I did not come in. I thought I was going to be handed the job. This guy named Velus Jones did work his rear off. He was able to reap the benefits of that hard work. And I'm sitting here in mid-December. What's the easy thing to do? Say, to heck with this Heupel guy. To heck with Tennessee. I'm not going to play here. My reputation's been established, and we've all been in jobs where maybe your reputation has been established for good or bad, but it can change. He changed it. I've talked to Cooper Mays about this on our YouTube channel. Please check that out. He changed his reputation, Caleb, and that's not easy to do. And he did it in a year. He did it with his teammates first, and then he did it with defenders throughout the season. He had to do it with Hooker at some point to trust him. And now he's done it with the national media and won the Biletnikoff Award. And I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and it's funny because when he said that last year, I've covered a lot of athletes who have admitted that they weren't as focused as they should have been the year before. Usually that's to me, that's usually an underlying part of your personality that just doesn't change overnight. And, I think Tyler Bray in 2011 acknowledged that he wasn't a good leader for Tennessee and that he was going to refocus in 2012. Well, they put up numbers, but you and I know he wasn't a good leader for Tennessee in 2012 either. He had the worst intangibles of any quarterback to ever play football at Tennessee. And I mean the worst intangibles.
Most of the time when somebody says, I wasn't mature enough to handle this, in like 3 months, they're still not mature enough to handle this.
Exactly.
Exactly. You know what you're beating around the bush on?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. And Tyler Bray's out here after he says all that. He's out here throwing beer bottles on top of cars from his dorm room, and dude, homeboy never changed. Johnny Manziel never changed, and most of the time that's the case. Jalen Hyatt, it sounds like he really did, 180'd himself. And this is kind of what Chris Landry talked about yesterday, though. Sometimes it's like we said with Randy Moss. Sometimes it's culture. I think Jalen Hyatt kind of saw that. You look at what the offense did last year with Josh Heupel. You can't sit there and look at yourself and be like, well, to heck with Heupel, he's not using me right. I think Heupel has the credibility at that point because Heupel just directed one of the best offenses in college football. You start to think, oh, maybe it's me. To quote Taylor Swift, I'm the problem, it's me. And
I don't know Taylor Swift. See, I don't.
She has a new song called Anti-Hero. It's a great song. Oh yeah, it's
second co-host that I've worked with, Austin Ward, who now covers Ohio State, that is in love with Taylor Swift. So I'm more of a GNR fan. So we'll just agree to disagree. How about
that? Okay. Well, all I'm saying is that yes, doing such a 180 is very rare. This, in college football, I think it does depend on being in the right situations. A lot of times, we talked about Alvin Kamara. One of the things that hurt Alvin Kamara was he may not have worked hard, but then every Tennessee fan was like, why didn't Butch Jones use him more? Because Jalen Hurts transferred out midseason. Alvin Kamara always looked better with the ball in his hands, and that probably fueled his ego of thinking, I don't need to do anything much more. Butch Jones didn't use me right. But yeah, Jalen Hyatt.
I heard a reason why Alvin Kamara wasn't, for the first time yesterday, why he wasn't used as much. I heard a reason.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Landry, right?
And it was like
Yeah.
he didn't want to show up in the training room. He didn't want to necessarily get better. Didn't want to run some of that wear off his tires. And yeah, that I'd never heard that before. I don't know about you. That's why we love having Chris on.
I hadn't heard it either. But then when Butch Jones is like the program is falling apart under him, if you're Alvin Kamara, you're thinking, well, I'm not the problem. He's the problem because look at how much of a disaster he is. And Kamara was right about that. But that doesn't mean he shouldn't have worked hard. If you're Jalin Hyatt, you look at the end of last year and you can't blame anybody but yourself because there's no way you can blame Josh Heupel in that system, given the numbers that were put up in it. So I think that helped him. And I give him credit still for maturing and doing that 180, but that's partially being in the right environment to allow him to do that.
Talk about a business decision. Maybe Alvin Kamara handled it just like he should. Now, I don't want to get 100% healthy because I don't want to go out there in that mess. All right, so hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, but especially the like button because I'm going to tell you 3 quarterbacks that are on Tennessee's radar and that they could pick up in the transfer portal. And I had a lot of questions about the kid at Wake Forest, so we'll address him as well. I think that's a natural fit for about 30, 40 schools. But I don't think he's in discussion right now. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to give you 3 names that are on the radar and would make great fits. And for those of you that say, oh, you got Nico coming in, you got Taven Jackson, who's highly rated, and you got Joe Milton, who's ready. Did you see some of those passes against Vanderbilt? Did you see that? Click the thumbs up button, and we want to bring more people in. We love to do that. If you want to take part in the super chat like Dean did, thank you very much. It's going to go right back into the show and making it bigger. So you give me 2 minutes, and I'm going to tell you what quarterbacks are on Tennessee's radar. And there's some pretty good ones. And there's a lot out there in the transfer portal. Look at my eyes. I can see. It is phenomenal. I don't need glasses. I don't need contacts. Why? Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. They are absolutely phenomenal. Local eye care right there in the Knoxville area. Back in 2 minutes, Tennessee transfer portal quarterbacks. Quite possibly more after this.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Callahan Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
This is Steve Rain. I own the Midnight Oil and Michelin Tire Direct service station here in Ooltewah. It's not a fancy place, never has been, but it's a clean place with clean restrooms and good folks who work here. We sell gas and fix cars, nothing glamorous, but we love what we do, and we're going to keep doing it for a long time to come. There's not many real service stations left, and that's a shame. We're the guys just like the guys back in your hometown. We'll fix your tire, change your oil, and put a new set of Michelins on your car. If you want a Twinkie, you'll just have to keep on going. Thanks for the business.
Alrighty, welcome back. It is time for This Day in Sports History. Before we get to some pretty significant transfer portal news, This Day in Tennessee Sports History is brought to you by Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach England is phenomenal. If you need a personal injury attorney in the Chattanooga area or all the way up to Athens, he'll take care of you, and he's got the power to go against those super strong attorneys that the insurance companies hire. Zach just sits back and laughs at him. Zach's got your back. It is this day in Tennessee sports history, and it is right now.
This day in sports history, putting things in perspective, exclusively on Off the Hook Sports with Dave Hooker.
You're so old. When you were a kid, rainbows were black and white.
And Amanda LaFrada.
New kids on the block just called. They wanted you as a backup dancer.
December the 9th, the Lady Vols defeated Texas 88-82 in Austin, Texas. Mimi Jackson led the Vols with 33 points on 10 of 18 field goals, 4 of 9 from the 3-point arch, and 9 of 11 free throws. So down in Austin, Texas, the Lady Vols defeated Texas 88-82 back in 2009. Okay, so let's get to some transfer portal news. So that's always a fun one. Here are 3 names that came to mind. First of all, let me ask you: am I crazy for barking up this tree, Caleb, that Tennessee needs to address quarterback in the transfer portal? Because some people on Twitter are like, "What are you talking about? You got Nico." Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. I mean, Tennessee's losing a Heisman caliber quarterback. You need to find another quarterback in the transfer portal. And as Chris Landry talked about yesterday, and as we know, Josh Heupel's entire offense is dependent on a good quarterback being in the system. And so you need to get as many as you can, because we already have concerns about Milton. Nico may not be ready. We don't know enough about Taven yet. Plus, he's coming back from injury. Yeah, you need a 4th one. And if you look at Heupel's system in the past, it was, the better the quarterback, the better the system. Hooker was at his best. With the Hooker, the offense was at its best. Dylan Gabriel, not as good at UCF as Mackenzie Milton, as it was with Mackenzie Milton. So, I mean, it's quarterback dependent.
No, and I think there are a lot of guys out there that could have a monstrous impact for Tennessee. And I want to get to those. And I do want to make sure that everybody's able to join us on Twitter. So bear with me for just a moment. But if I put this quarterback situation in front of you right now, how do you think it shakes out? Because I believe that Nico, I think some people think that I'm doubting Nico Iamaleava, but everybody I've talked to has told me that he has that dog in him. And that to me is almost as significant as the fact that he has a just cannon for an arm, has great mobility. I think he'll be better in this offense than Hendon Hooker. So I see this thing playing out as somebody may take a couple of snaps to start the season, but it's going to be ultimately Nico will win this job. I have no doubts there, but still, a freshman is a freshman. Okay, so when they come in, I've seen a lot of freshmen not play well. So David said Joe definitely has some passes that were certainly misses on him. Hendon had a phenomenal year and clearly deserved the Heisman and Walter Camp awards. I agree with that. He also had quite a few misses last year. Agreed. I really believe Nico's upside in this offense is tremendously higher than even Hendon Hooker's, which sounds crazy because he was a Heisman candidate. David said 3 quarterbacks is not enough in this day and age. Where, listen, one of the 3 dudes we're talking about, whether it's Milton or Taven Jackson or Nico, who enrolls here in a couple of weeks, they're going to transfer out if they don't feel good about where they sit in the job after spring practice, right? I mean, they're going to have 2 here in like 4 months.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, one of them, you might have 2 of them gone. I mean, if Nico wins the job,
yeah.
If Nico's better than Taven Jackson and Joe Milton, they're both gone. So then you're in real big trouble because you've got Navy Schuler and Gaston Moore behind you. Then, Dave, I want to ask you with Heupel's offense, is it me, or does it matter, or does the big arm matter more than the mobility for Josh Heupel's offense? I think, like Drew Lock had a big arm and thrived there, but Mackenzie Milton was mobile and Hendon Hooker was mobile, and the teams were more successful with those. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think the big arm doesn't matter as much as the ability to put air underneath the ball. So I would rather have the Hendon Hooker, who throws one of the most beautiful deep balls that I've seen since at Tennessee. Well, not probably since, I'll go ahead and tell you, T. Martin. I mean, you could go to a practice and at that time and just watch T. Martin throw footballs, deep balls, and sell tickets to that. I mean, they're beautiful, beautiful spirals. Now, intermediate wasn't as accurate, but I think Hendon Hooker throws a beautiful deep ball with great arch that makes it easy to catch. I think Joe Milton has a stronger arm, but I'd rather have the way Hooker throws a deep ball, to be quite frank with you, because I think it's plenty strong enough. And so here's what I'm hearing, and I apologize for looking at my phone because I actually got a text about one of these young men just now, so that I want to discuss. Okay, so the Sam Hartman thing. If you're not familiar with Sam Hartman, he's not on the website yet, but somebody will probably discuss. So Sam Hartman is right now at Wake Forest, and there's a lot of talk that he's interested in Tennessee, and that may well happen. So, by the way, if you want your friends to get this knowledge, click that thumbs up and that like button. We greatly appreciate it. So, right now, what I'm being told is the Sam Hartman thing is all just discussion of rumors. That's what it is at this very second, and that there's not a lot of meat on the bone right now. Now, guys that I think there are meat on the bone are the ones that I chose to write about, and I wrote about them. They are on the website right now, offthehooksports.com. So I had about 6 names previously that I had that were really would be good fits, but not so sure that they're really interested, and it was kind of a precursory look. But here's some guys that I've been told would be really good fits and that Tennessee would certainly be interested in. So let's go Davis Brin. Brin entered the transfer portal after a 5-7 season at Tulsa. He has 1 year of eligibility remaining, which is key if you're worried about scaring Nico away at all. He's from Texas, started the 2021 season through for 3,254 yards and 18 touchdowns, but he threw 16 interceptions, so that's bad. But the offensive line last year was horrible for Tulsa. He was sacked 32 times on just 250 passing attempts. So imagine that. 15% of the time you drop back and you're sacked. That doesn't even count pressures. But he still threw for 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns in 9 games, but he had nagging injuries. And he improved his ball security, only threw 9 interceptions last year despite that offensive line. So here's another one, Austin Reed from Western Kentucky that you should be keeping an eye on. He began his career at Southern Illinois, then transferred to West Florida before Western Kentucky. In 2022, Reed completed 353 of 547 passes for just over 4,200 yards and 36 touchdowns with 10 interceptions. He can run too, and he counted for 8 touchdowns on the ground. He wants a Power 5 school. Tennessee just right down the road. Now, one that I don't want anybody getting too incredibly excited about, because I was told that this is very much iffy, and I think Alabama is very, very good in keeping kids at home, be it an early exit to the NFL or transfer portal, is Ty Simpson. If he loses the job to Jalen Milroe, which he essentially already has, and he's the highly rated quarterback out of Martin. If he loses that job to Milroe, and he didn't start when Bryce Young got hurt last year, so this is a possibility that Ty Simpson could step in. Now, with Ty Simpson, he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. So this would not be a stopgap guy. This would be a guy that you say, hey, you're going to come in and you're going to compete for the starting job, which obviously would not be ideal for Nico Iamaleava. So, but the thing is, this might not be decided till after spring practice. So if he sees that Jalen Milroe, who really struggled, he might not lose the job, or he might not win the job. But Milroe, if he's the starter coming out of spring camp, don't rule out, I'm told, Ty Simpson. There you go. Those 3 names.
And also, and I'm going to throw out with Ty Simpson, and if he loses the job, that's a case where he may not be wrong. Normally, if a quarterback loses a job and then transfers, I'm like, don't take him. They lost the job for a reason. I don't say that with Alabama. God, I wish Amanda were here because her eyes would just like be shocked when I say this. But like Nick Saban, for a coach that has won so many national championships, is probably the worst manager of quarterbacks I've ever seen. And I can go down the list. 2000, he started Josh Booty over Rohan Davey the first 4 games. Rohan Davey was clearly better. Tennessee was the victim of that the first time. 2015, during the national championship year, Ole Miss's only loss that year. I'm sorry, Alabama's only loss that year was to Ole Miss because Nick Saban, on a whim, with Lane Kiffin, decided to start Cooper Bateman over Jake Coker for 1 game. The dumb move of the year, and that darn near cost them the national title. He was always uncomfortable handling the Jalen Hurts to a Tagovailoa situation. Ty Simpson could be better than Jalen Milroe, and Nick Saban would still start Jalen Milroe. He makes mistake after mistake when it comes to handling a quarterback controversy. He's a defensive guy. He doesn't like to deal with this. This is not something that Nick Saban likes dealing with, and you can tell he's very uncomfortable dealing with it.
I don't think he wants big-time playmakers at the position, which sounds crazy. I think he wants guys that are just going to do exactly what they're going to do, the Greg McElroys of the world. And what he's found is that recruiting has gone so well, he's come across some really special players like Jalen Hurts, like Bryce Young. I think he's Tua would be another one. I think he's come across some special playmakers. But and if Nick Saban could change college football, I think it'd go back to being defense. I think it would go back to play action, I formation. I think that's what they would do. And I think that time has passed, but you're right. I mean, there have been situations where I think he has definitely mishandled quarterbacks, and we'll see if that continues to be the case. We just saw an influx of people who just got online. So I want to share this with you again. The names that I think you should keep an eye on based on what I'm hearing that would be good fits for Tennessee in the transfer portal would be Davis Brin, out of Davis Brin, who I wrote about on offthehooksports.com. Tulsa, and then Austin Reed would be another out of Western Kentucky. And then Ty Simpson is one that is not a stopgap player, but if things don't go well for him at Florida, I'm not going to be surprised if he takes a hard look at Tennessee. And listen, here's the thing. For those of you that are worried about scaring off Nico or that sort of thing, guys, Tennessee has all the leverage in recruiting. I mean, let's be real honest with you. With this offense, I mean, if you wanted, I mean, outside of Arch Manning, and I say that just because their family is so incredibly committed once they make a decision. So I don't think you're going to flip him. But outside of him, what quarterback could you not make a run at and say, if this were the case, we want somebody in addition to Nico? What guy could you not go after right now with the way this offense played last year and the fact that Hendon Hooker's gone? Anybody.
The only people who would not come would be people you don't want because they would be scared of competition, like we've talked about. Why do you want a quarterback that doesn't embrace competition? Like that's scared. Why do you want a quarterback that doesn't have to work for his starting job? Even Peyton Manning, that was looking for the best situation for him possible when he was recruited in 1994, willingly went to Tennessee when Tennessee had a superstar athlete at quarterback in Brandon Stewart the same year. And by the way, they both went knowing they would compete. There's a reason both of them won conference championship, guys. Peyton Manning obviously became Peyton Manning, but Brandon Stewart only transferred after he clearly lost the job, and then he went and won the Big 12 title at Texas A&M, and Tennessee can thank him for that because they wouldn't have won the national championship had they had to play Kansas State in the title game that year. So
no, he ended up, and listen, for those that are younger or don't remember that, the debate over Peyton Manning, one of the all-time greats, and Brandon Stewart, who had, as you said, a great career at A&M, that was about 60-40 Peyton. And I mean, if the debate then was very, very close as to which quarterback they should let go and which quarterback they should glob onto. Now, I was even told there was some disagreement in the coaching office. I know David Cutcliffe loved Peyton Manning, as obviously that worked out. But there was some disagreement in the coaching office about which one would be the better of the two. So, yeah, a lot of these decisions that we think are just locks do not turn out to be that way. Now, as far as the transfer portal, Tennessee has taken a couple of guys in already. As you want to go to offthehooksports.com to get the latest hookup on those. And Tennessee has taken in a kicker, a tight end, and an offensive lineman that's the size of Darnell Wright, probably not as athletic as Larry Johnson the third is a big guy, but Darnell Wright, I don't think some people realize, and I get this from talking to Cooper and Jacob, how athletic he was. He could do back springs and back flips in the backyard, and he's 335, 340 pounds. So I'm not expecting that out of Larry Johnson. But as far as the other guys they fill in they get a kicker on board, which how key do you think that is? Caleb, what are your thoughts on bringing a kicker in as quickly as you can in the transfer portal?
I think it's huge. Right now, Tennessee has one kicker that it would be a place kicker next year. Did have one kicker. It was Max Gilbert. Kicker, like quarterback, you need at least two because kicker is a position you can't really judge until they're out there on the field because you have no idea how they're going to be able to mentally handle the situation. Kicking is like the most mentally tough position to play. And it also, no one points this out, but analytically, it has the second biggest impact to the quarterback in terms of the outcome of the game, in terms of a single position. I've always said if I were NFL GM, my biggest investments would be on the quarterback and the kicker. And no one thinks like that, but all I got to say is Adam Vinatieri.
The other guy that I like and I like a lot watching his tape last night is McAllen Castles. So if you haven't been to offthehooksports.com lately, go ahead and do that because we're writing about the guys that matter. And Caleb Gyro, another Caleb. By the way, if you're a Caleb and you want to work for offthehooksports.com, you've got an inside track. But I'm good. I'm kidding. We're good on Caleb. But Caleb Gyro.
Also, we're not going to hire any more Calebs. If your name is Caleb, we're eliminating you.
Yes, that's right. If it says Caleb on the top of your resume, you're out. Because we get confused and I send the wrong text all the time. But I do like the Castles kid a lot. I think he has an awful lot of ability. And then we had a question about Thomas Harper. Let me look at my notes and see what I got on Thomas Harper. Thomas Harper, I'm going to have to do some research on. I haven't been asked specifically about him to this point. But, yeah, I do think that he is – I think we're talking about the safety out of Oklahoma State. Is that who we're talking about, I believe? So, sure, possibility. It's really difficult to tell. I mean, I didn't see the Larry Johnson III coming out of left field. Yeah, Tennessee is in a position now where they can go in and they can tell these dudes, hey, you got the chance. Oh, the local kid from Carnes. Yeah, we wrote about him. Caleb Gyro is actually trying to run him down, John. So we haven't heard. Last I heard, I thought you were talking about somebody else. Last I heard, he has not had a Tennessee offer. So possibility, we'll see, but he is open and in the portal. But simple fact is, Caleb, Tennessee has a ton to sell these guys. And the portal is just, I'll go ahead and say it. It's bigger than recruiting when I covered it in the late 2000s and early 2010s. This is big.
The portal to me is like was it the 70s when the MLB Players Union finally won the right for free agency? And that was like 69 or so. I forget the year. It's a watershed moment in sports.
It was a Kurt Flood who
never got to take part in it himself.
Yeah, he basically sat out this a portion of the season to fight for it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And so until then, I'm sure all of sports was about who was the best at drafting. And then overnight, who was the best at free agency became a story. And that's been kind of a thing in baseball and football ever since. NBA is really just who lucks into the biggest superstar at the top of the, that's generational talent every year. But yeah, the portal is kind of like that. And there's also going to be more. I've thought about this recently. I don't know if there's a way to do this with. There's going to be some more artistic ways to get people in the portal. Sometimes I think one of the smartest things that's done in free agency in the NFL is the year the Seahawks won the Super Bowl in 2013. One of the most genius things they did was they waited 2 days after free agency started in the NFL. They waited 2 days before extending or even talking to anybody. The reason they did that was because so many teams jumped the gun and just tried desperately to get the biggest star on the market and then overpay. And by day 3, the players are starting to freak out that they're not going to get the offer they want, and you can kind of get them on a bargain. And so with the concept that scholarships are limited and you aren't guaranteed a scholarship if you enter the portal, maybe it is smart to maybe just wait like a week and then start talking to players. And you can maybe get a few a little more desperate that are elite. They're just desperately trying to get to a school because they're scared that they may not land at the school they wanted. And you can get quite a few good players in that.
Well, you know who the Kurt Flood of college athletics is, don't you?
Maurice Claret, Mike Williams.
No. You gonna keep guessing? Basketball player.
Ed O'Bannon.
Yep.
Yeah, national title UCLA, right? 95.
That's why my
Jim
son.
Harris.
That's why my son and I cannot play NCAA football. 2023.
Yes.
The game
Ed
doesn't
O'Bannon went up lawsuit.
because of that.
Don't blame him. Blame the NCAA for archaically fighting it for years.
Agreed. No, I agree. No, I meant it as a compliment, what Ed O'Bannon did. Definitely. Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland, whether you're in Knoxville, Nashville, or Chattanooga, man alive, it's worth the drive for those industrial mowers, the commercial mowers, and also the residential mowers. You'll love Vassy Lawn and Garden. Hoops this weekend. Caleb, what did you think of the Vols on Wednesday? And what do you think of Tennessee moving forward? Yeah, again, we're in December, so I think you learn a lot more in January. But these Vols appear to be defensive-minded, as you would expect from Rick Barnes. They've got a scorer that's a little banged up, and Vescovi. And I like where this basketball team is. Do I have a firm grasp of where this basketball team is? Not yet.
Yeah, I don't either. I think the one thing that stands out to me the most is Uros Plavsic. I never pronounce his name right. I apologize.
Even Ron Slay says he just calls him a Russian. He can't.
I will say that he has taken a step forward this year in development. You're seeing that now. And when you have a 7-footer that is that reliable, you all of a sudden do get a big advantage. Come tournament time, you can really almost run an NBA style offense at that point. I will tell this before we go. Everybody listening to this show, whatever it's set at, when Tennessee plays Maryland on Sunday, take the under. I don't care where it's set. I don't care if it's set at 90. I'm kidding on that. But take the under. We're seeing Tennessee basketball's defense. They haven't allowed more than 50 points in 4 straight games. Maryland is led by head coach Kevin Willard, who runs the Pitino-style zone, the Rick Pitino zone that nobody could ever figure out for years at Louisville. I think Jim Boeheim runs that too. He runs elements of that. And Maryland's defense has been very, very good early. That's why they only have 1 loss. It's going to be a defensive battle on Sunday. It's going to be boring. Not the type of basketball any of us like, because you might see
Kevin O'Neal action.
Yes, it's going to be like a 54-50 game. It's like Kevin O'Neal versus Quanzo Martin coaching on Sunday. And so Rick Barnes and Kevin Willard are probably better. But I'm just saying, it's not going to be because the offenses aren't good. Both of them have good offenses, but they play superb defense. Again, how far that takes you in the tournament, I don't believe defense wins championships in college basketball. Don't Tony Bennett Virginia me, everybody. Virginia had a really good offense that year in 2019. They just slowed it down, but they were very efficient. You can't win in college basketball just with defense. So, but it makes for a good regular season.
No, I agree with that. And when's the one time that I thought Rick Barnes was a real threat in the tournament? I thought it was when he had a guy named Kevin Durant, and he turned out to be pretty good. By the way, there's a new rule in the Hooker household that my son is not allowed to play with any team on NBA 2K that has Kevin Durant on it. I don't care if it's the all-time Nets team. I don't care if it's the it's the current team. I don't care. I got beat last night simply because I couldn't defend Kevin Durant. So I'm mad about that, and that's where I am. But the good news is that I can go to my friends at Alice Nest Barbecue and get the sauces and the rubs that I need. And I'm about to purchase one of those Green Mountain grills, which has the timer and uses the wood pellets, and it is fantastic. And you're going to love it. So, what do we got coming up on the site today? I know that I have a couple of things planned concerning the transfer portal, but Caleb, we've also got reaction from Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren exclusive to offthehooksports.com and their thoughts on the Orange Bowl. So there's a lot going on offthehooksports.com. Anything you got cracking so far?
Yeah, we got some Cooper stuff. I'm going to do a post, guys. You're going to read about it today that, as you guys saw, Josh Heupel and Dabo Swinney took the podium together the other night. The last time they went head-to-head, Josh Heupel was an offensive coordinator, and a week later he was fired. And a year later was when Dabo Swinney began his run at Clemson. They are in completely different positions now as career-wise than they were.
If you haven't had an opportunity to read some of the historical perspective of the Orange Bowl and Josh Heupel, and then Sam Levy possibly joining the Vols, which I thought was a long shot when Caleb brought it up. But Jeff, excuse me, that I thought was a long shot when he first brought it up. I thought, no, I could see this happening. And watch some football at Big Orange Phillies. Big Orange Phillies in North Knoxville. Big Orange Phillies on Maynardville Pike is fantastic for great food, family friendly, and just a really, really good time. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. A true testimonial. I got real serious about making sure that my dog had its chill pills from crafttreats.com. So you go to crafttreats.com, you use the promo code off the hook, and you'll get 20% off. And at Craft Treats, my dog is now able to jump on the bed, and it wasn't a couple of weeks ago because it's got arthritis in its hips. Also helps with anxiety and digestive issues. So certainly check them out. And we thank City Heat and Air. City Heating and Air is all about integrity. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. So do you have any gambling insight for me other than the under? Have you seen even a spread yet at this point?
I have not. I looked last night. I didn't see one. I'll look again to get today. Had a rough night last night. Guys, don't take parlays. I do them for fun, but you're never going to, parlays. That's like, you almost always lose on that. 80% of sportsbooks profits. And I took one on I got the Rams covering last night, which I hit, but I took one on Devontae Adams scoring a touchdown and the game hitting the over. Neither of those things happened because Derek Carr and the offense decided to just quit on me. Vegas decided to do exactly what they had not been doing the last 3 weeks in the NFL. So I'm a little beat down today, but my big one is Maryland, Tennessee under on Sunday. Sorry guys, I got nothing for the Army Navy game. I am an old grump. I think it's ridiculous that college football sets 1 week aside just for that game. You could accuse me of hating the troops. I don't. I just think it's stupid that you set 1 week just for that game.
I wouldn't gamble on it, but it's on my bucket list of things to go to. I covered a high school all-star event there, and I thought, man, I'd much rather it be the troops out here. But I love it.
They don't deserve a game to themselves. And what about Air Force then, guys? Why just Army Navy? College football is already condensed. There's not enough weeks in the season. And you're going to set apart 1 week just for this game that nobody really watches anymore? Sorry, that's been a soapbox of mine for years.
We will agree to disagree on that one. I'm just waiting for that Coast Guard team. That's what I need to see. That's what I'm dying to see. Vols Automotive Group on Callahan Drive, great place to purchase a car. They have an incredible selection in the service department that will take care of you. Vols Automotive Group on Callahan. He's the one, the only. Travis says, I watch it. I do too, Travis. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Have a fantastic day, everyone. This has been a presentation